In this video, we'll discuss the features on Jeremy Meek's face that point to strong genetic and constitutional strength, as well as a sensory and emotionally dominant nature. Enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back to another face reading. Today we've got Jeremy Meeks, who was suggested, I think, by a handful of subscribers. People had said, please read this guy. So I remember this guy. He came to fame years back because of his mugshot. Women were just swooning over this guy. They thought he was incredibly handsome. People were really into him. And I think he ended up either modeling after, and he may have modeled before. Don't quote me on any of that. But that being said, I didn't do a deep dive into his background, what the crime was that he got arrested for, or crimes. So I'm just sort of reading him cold. And again, part of the reason I'm doing this also is when we're reading someone, my job is not to be psychic and predictive. I'm not here to look at someone's face and say, well, this means this means this about you. And the person goes, yeah, you're right. It's like, cool story. But what does it mean for how I live? What do I actually do? And that's more the way to think about features is your features point to rhythms. And the question is, I have to ask you through Q&A, are you living these rhythms or not? Or were you even aware of them, that you might be carrying this thing? So that being said, if you are finding value in my content, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification, and share these videos with who you think will find them interesting. So Jeremy Meeks, when I was looking at his face, the first thing that leapt out, the dominant feature, quote unquote, was his bone structure. So in face reading, when we're talking about bone structure, this relates to one of the three treasures, or what they call the three layers, and that is Jing, Qi, and Shen. Jing, which he carries a lot of when we see that in big dominant bone structure, relates to constitutional strength and essence. Essentially, in a nutshell, good genes, bad genes, strong genes, or weak genes. And when a person has a very dominant bone structure, they have a clean-cut jaw, they have big prominent bones, typically this is a sign that the Jing, the genetic expression of the person, is very strong and they have good hormonal response. Now, this matters because hormonal expression and hormonal response as we age dictates hugely how well we age, how good we look, how much strength we have, how much sexual vitality we maintain. All of these things come into play. So as opposed to me, if I was working with Jeremy Meeks and for me to tell him these things, which he might already know, it would be, the conversation would be more along the lines of, hey, because you have strong constitutional strength, here are the things to be mindful of. For one, you're going to have resiliency and strength probably above average compared to most people. However, what you must be mindful of if you have strong constitutional strength, for anyone out there, if you fall into this category, is you can probably color outside the lines considerably more than the average person. It means you can drink more than the average person and get away with it, eat some crummy foods and probably get away with it, work harder, more hours, and burn the candle from both ends a bit more without a lot of consequence. However, when you get to a certain age, usually like past 50 or 60, shit can really hit the fan for people with strong constitutional essence if they have not been tending to their body. So they will kind of ward off those negative forces that they've been engaging for most of their life because of their constitutional strength. But when they get sick, it happens very fast, and then they're in a healing crisis. So that's something I would be orienting him to. If I were working with him, I would say, hey, be mindful of that dynamic. It would behoove you, if you have strong constitutional strength, to nourish that Jing, take care of it, because you are set up by the luck of the draw to live and have a more robust life than the average person. But a lot of times people with strong Jing end up burning it quite a bit. So that's one, strong constitutional strength. Now, the other thing is, in terms of individual features, were his cheekbones. Big dominant cheekbones, and this is exacerbated or amplified and brought to the front lines a bit more because the cheeks hollow. So when the cheeks are hollow and the cheekbones are big, the visual dominance is made even larger. The thing to think about with the cheekbones is it's a metal element feature, relates to the mountains of the face. And so when we see big dominant cheekbones, a lot of times this is a need for structure and order. And the person usually will be someone who is collectively, for lack of a better way to put it, kind of bossy. They like to delegate. They like to tell people what to do, how to do it. They can be good in managerial positions oftentimes. But with that can also come the rebellious streak. Don't tell me what to do. Someone who stands their ground and is a little bit bullheaded also. They can be kind of bossy to a fault. So again, these are metrics that I would be pointing to him and saying, hey, do you embody these? If not, be careful of it. And then when we see the hollowed cheeks, while typically most people, a lot of people will find this attractive. They're like, ooh, those chiseled features. The thing to remember is while it can be aesthetically pleasing to the eye, you have to think about the geography of the face. The cheeks relate to the lungs or the wei qi of the body. This relates to our immune response and how well we defend the outside world from coming in, whether it be emotional or physical, right? Bugs, viruses, and just bad emotions and bad experiences, how well we do that. When the cheek's hollow, the system can run a bit deficient. So I would be putting onto his radar, be mindful with your immune system, pay attention to your immune response, tend to your immune response in life in general, because your body has a propensity to get weak probably a bit faster than the average person. Now, the next component here is the jawline, very strong, cut, chiseled jawline. Those are wood metrics that relates to drive, vigor, energy, how well we dream our dreams into the world. And the thing you have to be careful of is when you have a lot of wood, there can also be that excessively pushy nature, driving a bit too hard and a bit too much. Now, the strong jaw, it's good, right? It means you have a lot of energy, but the eyebrows are the top expression of the wood element. So the wood element is shown up in the jaw. The liver and gallbladder regulate this. The eyebrows are sort of the external energetics. It's like you can think of the jaw as the reservoir of energy of how much, the quantity, and then the eyebrows are the quality of how that liver energy or that wood energy expresses out. His eyebrows are moderate. So what that means is he's got to be mindful of how he shows and utilizes his aggression and confrontational energy. Him doing that a bit more moderate, even though he's got a big reservoir, is better for his collective life force expression, according to face reading theory. Now, the last piece I'll touch on here, not last, second to last, is that he has what they call the death mask. So I've talked about this in many videos, but the death mask, if you think about it from kind of the literal sense, when people are close to death, when they are on their deathbed, people's faces will begin to look a bit more skeletal. I've lost some people to old age and to cancer, and I've seen them slowly die. And in those last days and last hours, the cheeks hollow, the eyes recess, everything looks a bit more gaunt. So yes, a person can get the death mask if they are starving, right? They're not getting enough food, if they're close to death, any disease that or experience that is taking form from the body, the death mask can show up. So there is that. But in addition to that, if the death mask shows up where the face presents a bit more skeletal while the person is alive, there are some metrics that you've got to pay attention to. Typically, what this means is when the death mask shows up, the person can express a few ways, but they can be highly intuitive. They can sort of have an intuitive sense about the spiritual world and the material world. They've got a foot in both, and they can kind of read down the middle. They can be well suited for like shamanic work or psychedelic work or psychedelic therapy or things in that genre. If you want to talk about spiritual pursuits and metaphysics, they can be good at that. But they can also have a very strong death instinct, which means they can be prone to engaging in risky behavior. So I think in his case, maybe the way this is expressing is if he was willing to do criminal acts to get arrested, there might be that risk-taking component, but there is a risk component. And a lot of times the death mask, those hollowed out features are attractive. People who engage dangerous things, especially men, many times women will find them attractive. And this relates back, I think, to our evolution of like the man who was willing to get into it with the animal at the cave, right? If to protect the cave, someone who was willing to defend a woman's honor, someone who was willing to get into physical battle to protect. Those strong features, those strong chiseled features often relate to hormonal response. Strong hormonal response means healthy aggression. Sometimes it can be overused. But all of these things I want you to have on your radar. He carries the death mask. So that means that these are themes that I would be cautioning him against and saying, hey, be careful, but here's also the positive side, right? You can also be highly intuitive. You can have a strong death instinct and kind of have a good bullshit meter for people as well. That's part of the death mask, is you can see between the veil a bit. The last piece is his mouth, very strong, dominant mouth. So the mouth relates to the five senses, sensing, feeling, expressing. So when a person has a big dominant mouth, the need for emotional expression is very important. Now, maybe he talks about his feelings, maybe he doesn't, but he's got to find a way to express those senses, the emotional senses, and also exploring the five senses. So a big dominant mouth is really characterized by someone who feels quite a bit. We all feel, all humans feel, but face reading says when you have a dominant feature, it says the allocations in this area are a bit higher. Therefore, In order to utilize that gift well and to regulate its potential negative effects, you've got to understand this theory, and that is where I come in. All right, y'all, that's all I've got for today. I really appreciate your time. Take care.